Hold up, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bet.
Welcome back, y'all. This is the Miscellaneous Minds Podcast. I'm your host, Jesus Dinero, here with my co-host,
Puma El Gato.
What do we got going on tonight, my man?
We have two big fights coming for UFC 314. Let's talk about it.
So there was a couple of big matches that were recently announced that I kind of wanted to discuss because I'll be honest with you, I think they're both banger fights. I think based on who's fighting, I think we have a lot of fireworks to look forward to. So first off, we got Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. And listen, I originally, when he started on his rise, I wasn't the biggest fan of Volkanovski, but the man definitely won me over. I think he showed a level of dynamicness in there that was very hard to replicate amongst other fighters. He was a great person as an individual. He showed a lot of tenacity, showed a lot of great humility. He was a great champion. However, ever since his unfortunate downhill slide, he's not been looking great. On the opposite hand, Diego Lopes has been looking great. He's been looking phenomenal in his last fights. So the question really comes to us is, does Volkanovski have enough in the tank? I know we made jokes about him being old man Volkanovski, as did everybody else. Does he have enough in the tank to take on a young up-and-comer like Diego Lopes? And listen, Diego Lopes has been looking great in a number of different ways when it comes to his most recent fights. And I feel like each fight he's built on the previous one to make it look just that much better. Listen, it's hard for me to pick somebody here. The only reason I'm going to pick a Diego Lopes is because I feel like Diego Lopes has not just momentum on his side, but he doesn't have that little voice in the back of his head saying you need, like, there's not a sense of urgency in the desperation way like with Volkanovski. Volkanovski has to put a dub on the board, man. Otherwise, people are going to start talking retirement. Again, he was already being referred to as old man, in his last fight. And given that he's now lost a couple of them, Islam and then Ilya, we have to start asking the question, is it that time? And I don't even say that like I want to say it because, again, I think with the world of Volkanovski, again, he did win me over as a fight fan. And even though he took two losses, he took two losses against the best dudes in the division. He took two losses against dudes that really... He took two losses against dudes that, like, most people are going to take a loss up against. So it's not that they're, like, bad losses and, he's humiliated. It's not like he was fighting some random. He was fighting, two of the best currently in the UFC. So with that being said, of course, you don't really want to see the man retire because you would think maybe he's still got enough in the tank. I just think Diego Lopes has been looking too good, too crisp. He's been on his game, and I feel like because of that, he's going to bring a lot of energy that I don't think Volkanovski is going to be able to replicate. That being said, never count out Volkanovski, man. Volkanovski is a wild card at this point. He's still got a lot of skills. He's still got a lot of the technicality, a lot of the explosiveness that he had previously. So maybe that'll be enough to get him over the finish line. I think it'll be interesting the closer we get to the fight to see what really happens. But at this particular moment, I am currently favoring Diego Lopes. I want a little bit more time to come closer to the fight to see how I really feel about it. But at this point, I think right now I'd be picking Diego Lopes over Volkanovski. But what do you think about that, my man?
I do think going up to this fight, I'm like, leading up to this fight, I think, okay, Volkanovski and Diego Lopes, there's going to be a fight. Then the wheels started turning in my head. I'm like, oh shit, it's Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. And I think, look, there's nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong with this fight. The more thing that I'm personally worried about is, it's one of those situations where I want both of these men to win, but I know realistically one of them is going to have to lose. Personally, I do like Volkanovski. Again, he's been a mainstay, one of my favorite fighters, especially in the UFC. Diego Lopes has been on quite a bit of a tear. I think coming off of his win at Noche UFC against Brian Ortega, T-City. Phenomenal performance right there. And Diego Lopes has been on such a tear that he's actually ranked number 5 in the same division that Volkanovski has been, which that in and of itself is pretty impressive. And again, it does say the power, the tenacity, and hell, even the potential that somebody like Diego Lopes has against a Volkanovski. Going up to this fight, it's one of those things where I really want both. I really don't know who I want to win at the end of the day. Volkanovski, I do want him to still hang in the division, hopefully win the gold one more time. But again, Diego Lopes has been on such a tear, and he has a lot of potential within him. And I really want to see this young kid win. And it's one of those things where we're gonna have to, at the end of the day, going into this fight, we're gonna have to make a very unfortunate sacrifice if either one of these men lose. Volkanovski wins, cool. He gets further chance at the gold. If Diego Lopes wins, that means Volkanovski is unfortunately going to have that talk about retirement. And again, it's tough. It's tough. I like both of these men. But if I were to put my money on what I would personally want to see and what I even think realistically is going to happen is I think Diego Lopes is actually going to take this fight against Volkanovski. I don't know how. I can't tell you specifics because even I don't know. But if I were to bet my money on something, I would put it on, personally, Diego Lopes taking this win.
Yeah, listen, man, I would not at all be surprised if Volkanovski pulled it off, but I do think right now I'm favoring Diego Lopes. But again, as we get closer to the fight, we'll give a more in-depth analysis, and we'll see how it really goes. It'll be interesting to see what happens, man. It'll be a good fight to watch and to analyze. That being said, let's move on to our next fight. We have Michael Chandler versus Paddy the Baddy. And listen, man, I for some reason, I think a lot of people, myself included, we want to dislike Michael Chandler. Mostly it's because Michael Chandler hasn't really won a whole lot of fights in the UFC. Before he came into the UFC, yes, he won more than a few fights. He was looking phenomenal, so on and so forth. But in the UFC, he hasn't really won. Now, don't get me wrong. He was facing, again, top-tier talent, the Dustin Poiriers of the world, the Charles Oliveira's of the world, so on and so forth. So it's not like he was facing nobodies. And obviously he held out for, God, way longer than he should have, a year and 2 years, so on and so forth, for the McGregor, that fight that never happened. So I'm glad to see him back in the ring. I'm going to take a line from Dustin Poirier. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Michael Chandler, but I hope Michael Chandler wins. I like Michael Chandler more than I like a Paddy the Baddy. I don't necessarily have hard feelings against Paddy, but I feel like the man talks a little bit too much, and while he does back it up, so far he's backed it up against not super big names. In fact, some people have even said that he's been dodging certain names that he may have had rivalries in previous organizations and sometime in his earlier career. Also, there's a couple fights where I feel like he actually didn't win. I can't remember the specific individual because it was somebody with not like a super big name, but it was at least 2 fights ago or so that it was definitely a controversial win. So there's a little bit of that in there, but he still talks like he's years above everybody. What comes to mind is a Sugar Sean, in that Sugar Sean talked up the world, and yes, he beat a lot of lower tier fighters, but then when he got put up against somebody big, someone that brought just as much heat as he did, Merab, he ended up losing and got dominated. So I see something similar happening here. That being said, Michael Chandler, again, hasn't been doing a whole lot of winning. Michael Chandler has not been doesn't have exactly a great record in the UFC. So can Paddy win this? Yeah, he can. Absolutely. Especially the way that Michael Chandler fights. Michael Chandler is tailor-made for a Paddy the Baddy to win, because Michael Chandler goes in there and he lets everything fly, man. He throws everything in the kitchen sink. And that's a perfect type of fight for Paddy because, as he says himself, he's a scouser, man. He goes in there to throw blows and see who gets knocked out first. So this could be tailor-made for Paddy. So I honestly don't care who wins too much on this one. It's going to be a good fight. It'll be an exciting fight. These are the type of fights that I like to see, where we go in there and we'll see a lot of big, heavy blows get thrown. So we'll see how it goes, man. That'll be interesting. Again, right now I'm going to start to favor Michael Chandler a little bit, just because he does have more experience against higher tier opponents than does a Paddy the Baddy. But again, Michael Chandler is tailor-made for a Paddy the Baddy. What do you think about that, my man?
Oh man, listen, this is tough, man. Especially for somebody like Michael Chandler. I actually like Michael Chandler, but I can understand that he is more of a gladiator / spectacle fighter, more so than he is a super confident one. And I know I'm gonna ruffle feathers with that one, but I mean, if you look at his record, it's like the fact of the matter is, like, yes, he's fought the likes of Dustin Poirier, he's fought against Charles Oliveira, he's fought against Justin Gaethje, but the fact, like, those are good fights. I'm not gonna deny that those are phenomenal fights. But he still lost all of those. And look, we have to be real about this. We have to be real about this. And I'm not saying Michael Chandler isn't a bad fighter, but again, when you're up against the names that are listed, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, all of those men are basically gatekeeping Michael Chandler from getting any higher in the UFC. Again, nothing to knock against them, But the fact of the matter is, he's still been gate kept by 3 men. And honestly, going into this fight with Paddy the Baddy, honestly, that's not a very good sign. I know Paddy the Baddy, again, he's had questionable wins. I think the fight you're referring to was against Jared Gordon, and then there was also Jared Gordon, and then there was the fight against Tony Ferguson. Which, look, man, it's Tony Ferguson. He's gone to pasture at this point. And again, that's the only fight of the last 5 fights that Michael Chandler has actually had a win against was Tony Ferguson. Which, that's a win, but is it really? Again, when you're being gatekept by all 3 of these men, and you're against a younger opponent that's I don't want to say been a tear, because again, there were questionable wins in his last 3, but still, he's a little bit more younger, a little bit more experienced. He's able to take blows kind of decently. And again, Michael Chandler is, I think there's an 8-year difference between them. Michael Chandler is 38, and Paddy the Baddy is in his 30s. Which this is one of those unfortunate situations where Michael Chandler, at least from my perspective, this is a situation where he's basically a legend getting fed to the wolves to try and build up a new talent. And let's not deny right here that Dana White wasn't at least trying to build Paddy up to some extent in the past. And I think this is a situation where, well, I guess Michael Chandler's on his way out. We might as well give him, give Paddy a legend to, put him on the book, so to speak. So I think this is one of those unfortunate situations. As far as what I think is going to happen, and I'm pretty sure you know the tone that I'm going to go with this. I do think Paddy the Baddy is going to come out the victor in this, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I love Iron Mike, but this isn't about what I like. This is about me being realistic, and that's what I think realistically is going to happen in this matchup.
I wouldn't be surprised by that at all, man. Again, Michael Chandler is tailor-made for a Paddy the Baddy to win. He goes in there, he's very reckless, he throws a lot, he leaves himself open a lot, he's very aggressive, yes, but so is Paddy the Baddy. And the worst part for Michael Chandler is that Paddy the Baddy does know how to pick his spots when it comes to some of those knockout blows. So we'll see how it is, man. It'll be interesting. Again, we'll analyze the fight in more depth as it gets closer, but it'll still be an interesting fight. 314 is going to be interesting. For everybody involved, it's going to be a great card, and we'll see how it goes, my man. And with that, make sure to like, comment, hate, subscribe, DM us about the bullshit, and
Until next time, get rest and stay blessed. We'll see you in the next one.